Darkness. Not the gentle darkness of sleep, but a suffocating, endless void that pressed in from every direction, swallowing all sense of time and place. Absolute suffocating blackness pressed in from all sides, as if the very air had thickened into a heavy shroud, smothering every thought and movement. King John V of Portugal awoke not to dawn, but to stale, confined air and the taste of dust on his tongue. His mind struggled to make sense of the nightmare, but the nightmare was real. His last memory, pain in his chest, blurred faces of physicians hovering over him, their voices urgent and distant, then a cold, creeping nothingness. He tried to move, nothing. His limbs were heavy, unresponsive, as if they belonged to someone else, or to a corpse. Panic flickered. His fingers brushed polished wood, inches from his face, the surface smooth and unyielding, a silent barrier between him and the world above. He traced the outline, a lid above, wood below to his sides, enclosed. The space was impossibly tight, every breath a struggle. The horror dawned. He was in a box, not a bed, not a chamber, but a coffin, sealed and silent. His heart hammered. This was not his bed, not his palace. The cold stone around him was no royal sanctuary, but a tomb. The silks against his skin were not night clothes, but a burial shroud, their touch both luxurious and terrifying, a final mockery of his former life. The scent of wilting flowers and sealing wax filled his nostrils, the smell of a tomb, of endings, of ceremonies meant for the dead. They had buried him. His own court, his own family, had sealed him in this ornate prison, believing him lost to the world forever. The monarch of an empire, now a prisoner in a 6-foot kingdom of darkness. All his power, his titles, his riches, useless here. A scream built in his throat, but the coffin swallowed it. A muffled, hopeless cry that died in the velvet darkness, unheard by any living soul. He was alive, breathing, utterly trapped. Each breath fogged the air, a small proof of life in a place meant for the dead. The weight of earth and stone pressed down, a crushing reminder of the world above, so close, yet impossibly distant. For King John, the true horror was not death, but that the world believed he was already gone. His name would be mourned, his memory honored, while he remained trapped in darkness. His ordeal had just begun. The silence was absolute, broken only by the frantic beating of his own heart and the shallow rasp of his breath. Every breath was a reminder. He was not dead. Not yet. But the line between life and death had never felt so thin. But he was alone, entombed and forgotten. The world above moved on, while he remained in the cold embrace of the grave. The king's power meant nothing here. Only the darkness remained, vast and eternal, as he faced the terror of being buried alive, alone, unseen, unheard. How could such a mistake happen? How could the most learned men of their age, trusted with the life of a king, make such a devastating error? The answer is as complex as it is tragic. The answer lies in the limits of 18th century medicine. Doctors relied on tradition, intuition, and the scant knowledge available to them. Their tools were primitive, their understanding of the human body incomplete. King John suffered strokes and seizures, mysteries to his physicians. They had no way to explain his sudden collapses, no treatments to offer, and no real hope of recovery. They watched his body go limp, breath and pulse undetectable. Panic and confusion filled the room as the king's life seemed to slip away before their eyes. A feather to his lips, a mirror for condensation. Nothing. These were the best tests they had, and both failed to show signs of life. They listened for a heartbeat, heard only silence. The room grew heavy with dread as hope faded. Their conclusion: the king was dead. There was no dissent, no second opinion, only the grim certainty of their senses. In Lisbon's heat, burial could not wait. The summer sun was relentless, and tradition demanded a swift funeral. The kingdom needed stability. Delay was unthinkable. Advisors and nobles pressed for action, fearing unrest or even chaos if the king's death was not swiftly confirmed. The physicians signed the death certificate, setting the royal burial in motion. The machinery of state moved quickly, leaving no room for doubt or hesitation. But the king was not dead. He was in a deep coma, his vital signs too faint for their senses. His life lingered, undetected as the world mourned. No stethoscopes, no machines, just human error. The limits of their era sealed his fate. They mistook deep sleep for death. In the flickering candlelight, even the wisest could be deceived. And so, with all ceremony, they buried a living man. A tragic chapter in history, born from the shadows of ignorance and haste. King John's story is not unique. Throughout history, the terror of being buried alive has cast a long shadow over humanity, touching people from all walks of life and every corner of the world. The fear of being buried alive haunted generations. It was a nightmare that lingered in the minds of both the rich and the poor, inspiring countless tales and superstitions. Angelo Hayes, a Frenchman in the 1930s, was buried after an accident, only to be found alive days later. His miraculous survival shocked the nation and reignited old fears. Alice Blunden, in the 17th century, was buried after drinking poppy tea. The sedative effects made her appear dead, a tragic mistake that would haunt her village for years. Children heard her cries. She was exhumed too late. The horror of her fate became a cautionary tale, whispered from one generation to the next. Such tragedies led to laws requiring waiting periods before burial. Authorities hoped these new rules would prevent further heartbreak and ensure no one was buried before their time. Even royal tombs had rituals to prevent mistakes, like Empress Zita's funeral, where her identity was challenged before the crypt opened. The fear of error spared no one, not even the most powerful. These stories were not just legends, they reflected real anxieties. Newspapers and pamphlets spread tales of premature burial, fueling public paranoia and fascination. Safety coffins with bells and breathing tubes were invented for the wealthy. Some even included flags or windows, all designed to give the dead a chance to signal for help if they awoke underground. The fear-shaped burial customs, literature, and public consciousness. Writers like Edgar Allan Poe turned these anxieties into chilling stories that still unsettle readers today. For centuries, the certainty of death was elusive. Doctors struggled to distinguish between life and death, especially before modern medicine. The grave was not always the final resting place. Exhumations sometimes revealed desperate attempts to escape, deepening the collective dread. Medical misdiagnosis was a real, terrifying threat. Without reliable tests, even experts could be fooled by faint heartbeats or shallow breaths. The line between life and death was thin. Families and doctors alike lived in fear of making a fatal mistake. And sometimes it was crossed, leaving behind stories that would echo through the ages. A chilling reminder of how fragile the boundary truly was. 18th century medicine was a blend of observation, ancient philosophy, and superstition. Humorism ruled health meant balanced fluids. Illness meant imbalance. Bloodletting was common, especially for strokes, ironically weakening patients further. Purges, emetics, herbal concoctions, even astrology were used. For a king, no expense was spared, but treatments were often desperate guesses. Royal physicians balanced healing with politics. Admitting ignorance was not an option. The king's health meant the kingdom's stability. Declaring him dead provided certainty in crisis. It was a medical and political act, one that tragically prioritized order over hope. The gamble cost the king his life. A monarch's tomb was a statement of power and legacy. King John was laid to rest in the royal pantheon, a grand hall of stone sarcophagi. The process, embalming, a lead-lined coffin sealed inside a wooden casket, then entombed in stone. The layers were meant to protect but became an inescapable trap. For the living, escape was impossible. Wood, lead, and stone muffled every sound. The tomb's grandeur amplified the king's isolation. Acoustics swallowed any cry for help. The royal dead rested in silence. For King John, the tomb was not a monument, but a prison. Surrounded by ancestors, he was utterly alone. In the coffin, terror gave way to survival instinct. King John pushed against the lid. Nothing moved. He kicked, pounded, screamed, each effort muffled, futile. His knuckles bled, his throat grew hoarse. Time lost meaning. Air grew thick, breaths labored. Oxygen faded, dizziness set in. His struggles slowed, hope dimmed, resignation crept in. The king's power was useless here. He was defeated not by enemies, but by a box and mistaken certainty. His last sensations, darkness, burning lungs, and the irony of his fate. The monument built to glorify him became his final torment. Silence claimed him. The truth of King John's end surfaced years later. The kingdom mourned, a new king ruled, and life moved on. The official story, a peaceful death. The reality discovered during renovations, the coffin was splintered from within. Fingernail marks, torn shroud, a contorted body, evidence of a desperate struggle. The king's face was frozen in terror. The secret was kept, a stain on the monarchy and medicine. No public admission, no rewritten histories. The story became a whispered legend in palace corridors. Too terrible to acknowledge, too shocking to forget. The House of Braganza's legacy was forever changed. The king's final moments remained a dark secret. Whispers of the king's fate spread, sowing doubt in the court. Trust in physicians was shaken. Fear lingered for generations. The tragedy exposed the need for better ways to determine death. The feather and mirror were no longer enough. The royal family's grief was tainted by irony. Their mourning was for a man still fighting for life. The Pantheon became a monument to a fatal mistake. King John's legacy was forever entwined with this cautionary tale. His smallest, most terrifying prison became his most enduring story. King John's fate is a lesson in humility for science. 18th century physicians did their best, but their knowledge was flawed. What was once truth became a deadly misconception. Such tragedies drove the demand for better diagnostics. The stethoscope, invented in 1816, transformed medicine. Finally, faint heartbeats could be heard. Waiting mortuaries and improved embalming followed. Society recognized the need to protect the living from premature burial. Today, death is defined by rigorous standards unimaginable then. We owe our certainty to the painful lessons of the past. The king's silent scream echoes as a reminder of the cost of ignorance and the progress it inspired.